Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
And I'm Office Bloke Max.
Here we are, all three of us. If Patreon's your thing, check out the link in the description below. There's loads of stuff on there, starting for a bargain price of just
£1.50 a month.
help support the channel.
Yeah.
And loads of stuff on there as well. You'll find season 1 of Tyres is on there. And
It
we
is.
found out season 2 is coming out June 5th.
Absolutely. So we'll be on to that.
Get onto it, check
Big
it out.
time.
Is life better in the USA or Europe? An honest view.
Yeah.
Well, I've lived in both,
Yeah.
so I can give an opinion.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Obviously, I live in Europe right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plans to retire to the USA,
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
which I'm going to do. Sooner the better.
Yeah.
If I can be honest. But yeah, it's, I think for a family growing up, especially for like children, age between 0 and 19, let's say, miles better in the USA.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Right.
So much more to do, I think.
More opportunities, you think,
Yeah, I
and
think
things like that?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, obviously, me and Max can only speak of what's going on in this country because obviously we've not stayed.
Yeah.
You've stayed around Europe as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
But where have
correct.
we've just sort of like in England purely. So
Manchester.
that's all we know. But rest of Europe, I'm not quite so sure where they're up to. But
Yeah, it's all right. It's like I said, I lived in Holland, lived in the UK, obviously. I've been to most countries in Europe. But I just think the USA is more achievable.
yeah,
For most
right,
things.
okay,
You
yeah,
can pretty much get anything you want.
Yeah.
Do anything you want. Obviously within the law.
yeah.
On camera.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway, should we get into this? Who's this, Max? Who did you say his name is?
This is a guy called Nathaniel Drew. I think he's either American that's come to England or Europe or vice versa.
Yeah,
Sure,
let's get
it's
into it. Is
Yeah,
life
right,
better
okay.
in the USA or Europe? Let's see.
It turns out humans are not the same everywhere. Who you are is at least partially influenced by where you are. Your environment literally has an impact on you. And if you don't believe me, studies show this. And this is a dynamic that's influencing all of us, including me, as I've moved from one continent to another. The tug of war between the US and Europe is just so intriguing to me. It just feels like this endless battle between the new and the old world in the West. There's no right and wrong, obviously, when it comes to a discussion like this of cultural comparison. There's just trade-offs. It turns out that you can't have it all. I think the human race really benefits as a species from our differences. Plus, it's really fun to articulate the things that I'm seeing take place in the world. And so that's the inspiration behind this piece, comparing the life that I've lived for 19 years in the US to the one that I've lived for 5 years here in Europe, and how my view of things continues to evolve. Now, national stereotypes are nothing new, right? One of the easiest ones to point to is the idea that there's more introversion in Asia, for example. Generally speaking, massive generalization, and more extroversion in other places, like Brazil. There are exceptions to all generalizations, right? But there's also a grain of truth. The jokes that we make about these sorts of things wouldn't be funny if they were completely inaccurate. If I were to say, oh, the US is a quiet country that is very respectful to all other nations and doesn't make a lot of noise, I lose all credibility, right? You just don't believe me because there's not really a lot of truth to that. Now, while I've already made a few pieces exploring cultural comparisons between different parts of the world, different countries and different regions, I want to dig a little bit deeper this time. Beyond superficial comparisons like, oh,
Europeans use air conditioning a lot less than Americans.
yes, produce is a lot cheaper and a lot higher quality in Europe than in the United States because the governments subsidize that sort of thing because people care about it a lot more. And yes, technology is a lot more affordable in the United States, partially because of taxation on imports, but also because as a society, there's more of an orientation towards innovation. And one of the ways
Saw a thing yesterday with Apple. I don't know if you've seen it. Apple lost 10% of its value yesterday.
Wow.
Or did this week or whatever. Yesterday, whenever.
Yeah.
Due to all these tariffs that Trump's put in.
That's right, yeah.
put in
I'm not
place.
surprised, yeah.
But yeah, but they're saying now that the cost of an iPhone is going to treble over here.
God.
Well, they imported from the US.
Yeah, it will be, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think the raw parts or the main parts are
China.
from China.
Yeah.
Brought into the US, assembled in the US, and then distributed globally.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah.
No, I just thought they came from China, like everything else seems to. So I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah, so it's just when I saw the Apple logo there, I was just reading about this morning.
Yeah. Wow.
that keeping up with the Joneses manifests itself in the US is having the latest shiny thing. But I want to dig deeper into the character of these two continents and the trends that I'm noticing in people that live in these two continents.
Oh my God, there's no lanes. There are no lanes.
Fair warning, these are just my opinions. I am just sharing my observations that I see in the world and within myself. So take it or leave it. And if you disagree with something that I say, please feel free to share it in the comments. This is supposed to be fun. I find this sort of thing fun. For every point I'm going to make here, I'm going to really try, despite my biases, yes, I chose to live in Europe, explore the positives and negatives here, because I think there are positives and negatives on both sides. Americans are known for their patriotism, literally thinking to themselves, we are the best. And that's definitely not everyone, but enough people do think that it's a real thing. This really cracks me up because, that's got to be one of the fastest ways that I can think of to tick someone off. Like, who likes the guy who shows up at the party and won't stop talking about how they're the best? As I'm sure you can tell, this really annoyed me quite a bit, having grown up in the US, but with immigrant parents. But a lot of Americans really believe this. And what doesn't help matters is the reality that a lot of people can point to the fact that the US is a world superpower. And look, there are a lot of really proud Europeans too, and maybe secretly they think they're the best. Okay, but it is a little bit harder to make the argument that you're the top dog right now if you're Greek or Italian, when in reality your moment to shine came centuries ago. For the record, I don't think there's a best country. I don't think in those terms. I think different countries are good at different things. And I don't feel like quantitative measurements like GDP say anything about the quality of a country. Now, the reason I bring all this up is because of a weird feeling that I get when I return to the US. It's this feeling that I'm in the center of the universe. And obviously I know that's not the case, but the relationship between the US and Europe doesn't work the same way both ways. Here in Europe, there's a steady stream of news coming from the US, but when I'm over there, it feels like there isn't much talk about what's going on in the rest of the world unless something really big happens, like a war. Most mainstream media barely covers what's going on internationally, and unless you're a worldly American, and there definitely are some of those out there, you don't have very much of an idea of what's going on out there. In many ways, the US does feel geographically isolated. And maybe that's because the distance between Los Angeles and Las Vegas is bigger than the distance between Paris and London. It does feel like Europe is closer to a lot of the rest of the world. And because the distance is smaller, you can't pretend that there aren't neighbors all around you. France cannot pretend Germany isn't like right there. I personally believe this is a major factor in how we ended up with the stereotype that Americans are terrible at geography, world geography. Maybe also the stereotype that a lot of Americans are uncultured. And speaking of that, actually, culture is a confusing word. There's something extremely interesting to me.
I get what you're saying there, in a way, but at the same time, like you said, he talks about it as well, just the vast size of America.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about the United States of America, I'm talking about Canada as well, South America, Central America, all that. It's massive, it's beyond, when you look at something like the size of Brazil or the size of Canada, just then, when you're talking USA, if you want to travel to LA to New York, coast to coast, fucking far. It's about 3,500 miles, something like that.
That is a long way, You're talking time differences and all sorts, in the same country, you know what I mean? It's huge,
so
isn't
it? They're kind of lucky in a way of like the way you look at it, that everyone speaks that same language, whereas we don't have that across here. If we travel 2 hours by plane, we'll be in Poland, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
Don't speak English.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them do speak English, but they're
not the first language
Polish,
though.
Correct. So it's the same wherever you go. There's only us that speak English, really. In the whole
Did
Europe.
you find it's a bit more in the US, sort of like the East Coast, and they think of themselves as like sort of their own country? Maybe Texas area think themselves as like one conglomerate. Then on the East Coast, they think they're sort of like
I think what it is,
a little bit separate.
Very patriotic, as he said, as he aimed towards there. But what you've got is if you go to Texas, the Texans are very proud to be Texan.
Yeah.
New York is very proud to be New Yorkers. Californians are just weird. No,
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Well, their states are unified, aren't they? But they are obviously the United States is a group of states altogether.
Correct.
So
But
how many groups is that in terms of?
It's 50 states, isn't there?
Yeah.
But how many also align with each other, or is it just?
Oh, they all align with each other. I think they've all got their own individual rules and laws and.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they have a lot of
finance and all that kind of stuff that go with it.
They have a lot of input themselves, don't you, into what's going on in their own states and stuff like that. So
It's hard to try and imagine over here the size difference from England, which is tiny, compared to the USA, or even like a place like Poland, which is bigger than you think, or
When you look at Britain now and you look at the size of it, it's very small, but it's very populated.
Yeah,
dense.
for the size of the country,
people, whatever it is.
It's around about
people.
It's around about 70 million these days.
And that's in such a small area.
Yeah.
It's crazy, sort of like.
Well, you look at the UK and put it within the US map. I mean, how many times would it go in there? A lot of times, wouldn't it? So
It would.
Yeah.
But like I say, you're all living on top of each other here, pretty much. There's not many places where you can go where you've got space.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Unless when you look at the pockets of volume, they're all based around Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, London,
Landmarks.
Birmingham, stuff like that.
You go to certain places in the middle of Wales. Fuck all there.
Yeah,
Nobody. No,
sheep.
Literally sheep. Sheep and fields.
Which, to be fair, is lovely.
It's beautiful, yeah. It's beautiful. It is one of the places where you've got space, but everyone just sort of like masses to these sort of like these mega cities.
Yeah, especially in Wales, it's more like the coastlines, isn't it? Like Cardiff, Swansea, then the north of Wales as well. That's where all the revenue is. I think a lot of it's tourism, isn't it?
All around the coast.
Around the coastlines, isn't it? So yeah.
About the whole conversation about culture. According to a lot of Europeans, the US is a place that lacks culture. But that doesn't make a lot of sense because the US is actually one of, if not the biggest exporters of culture in the whole world. That's one of those things that really shocked me when I moved abroad. Everyone is exposed to the aforementioned American media and therefore American politics and current events. American music is everywhere, it's ubiquitous. Honestly, you could say I'm an export of the United States, and I'm not sure I could argue with that. The US is like always the loudest kid in the room. And even just cities like New York are an explosion of art, and it's one city in a giant country. So what are we saying here really? What are Europeans referring to? I don't think these big mainstream exports are what Europeans are referring to. I think they're talking about what you do on a day-to-day basis and how much that can change from region to region. I'm talking about the customs and traditions that have been passed down for generations, the different regional dishes that come from centuries ago. I'm talking about the superstitions or the different card games or the celebrations that take place that commemorate something that happened before modern day France or Austria or Italy even existed. Bizarre linguistic quirks, beyond the fact that there's a different language every direction you look. Architecture that changes every few hundred kilometers or miles. Am I suggesting that the US does not have customs and traditions? No, it does. I think about Thanksgiving and Halloween and hot dogs and baseball, the Super Bowl. There are a lot of things. It's a big country. But one thing all of these things have in common is that they stretch across the entire expanse of the country. The US, for better or for worse, is associated with uniformity and scale. Maybe that's just a facet of being such a young country. For better or for worse, Europeans see the KFCs and the Starbucks that are dotted across all of their major cities, and they see that as the mark of the US and how it operates. Now, a lot of Americans know this, and some even criticize this, right? But it's still happening. I just personally have a sinking feeling when I see the same exact strip mall in any state that I might go. And it does feel like the only way I can see the same thing in Hungary and Spain is if I go to a major chain, a lot of which are American. Again, maybe this is because of size, you know? A 4-hour train ride can take you to any one of like 7 countries in Europe, and you're lucky if a 4-hour flight will take you outside of the US. And I think a lot of Europeans take pride in this cultural richness, the density of different things going on, you know, being able to go to a different place so easily and not understand a word. One major difference for me between the Europe and US is the language element. And I know I care about this more than most people, but I do think it has an impact on your experience of each place. And it's one of the main reasons why I moved to Europe. Yes, you have all kinds of language diversity in places like Miami and New York, which is really cool. But overall, English would do the job in the US. That's really not the case in Europe. Yes, English is the most international language, but still to this day, not being able to speak French when you're in France means you are not having the full French experience. That's just how it is. And honestly, I love living in a world where there are many different languages and many different ways to say things, and that we don't all necessarily understand each other. For me, it's very stimulating seeing or hearing the different sounds and different ways that people can communicate with each other. It adds a lot of color to the world. Yes, I speak Spanish, but if I go to Barcelona or spend time in Catalonia, I don't understand Catalan. I speak Italian, but Southern Italians are difficult for me to understand, partially because of the accent, partially because of the dialects. It's just awesome richness that I appreciate so much. And kind of counterintuitively, it is precisely because there is that barrier there, that it's difficult to learn a language, that it's difficult.
No, you go to some parts of like Louisiana. You know what I mean? And they start talking, so you'd be like, "What?"
I could imagine.
So you do have the different dialects and the different sort of like. I know it's not a different language; it's still the same language.
Yeah.
But they have the different dialects wherever you go across throughout the USA. And as much as I can understand someone who's Italian and they're talking in Italian, you pick up on it. And, it's like I say, I lived in foreign countries where English wasn't the original language, other than not the national, the first language.
First language, yeah.
And you pick up on what they're saying and what they're doing just by body language, basically.
I was going to say exactly that. Body language, facial expressions, hand gestures. I mean, that's pretty much an international thing, isn't it? You can always pick up things from that, can't you? So it's a big thing. Listen, someone from America coming into the middle of Manchester, and you probably won't be able to understand them.
No.
But
I imagine many people who might watch this who are not native English, let's say, but they might speak English. So say from the USA, I reckon if us three started having a proper conversation where it was just like about in a pub conversation,
completely relaxed
a lot of people probably wouldn't
struggle a bit, probably. I get that absolutely.
Probably speak faster,
slang,
with slang words that come in, and different things, and it's. It's
going back to France. I mean, I think a lot of them can speak English, but they choose not to when as soon as they know you're English, they turn off the "I can speak English" tap. I think.
I know. It's I'm sure they spoke English during the late 30s and early 40s. So like get the help they needed, sort of thing.
To decode how people are communicating, that when you do unlock that door, it's like that much more incredible. That is what makes languages so amazing to me. They're world expanding tools. I fell in love with France and with Europe when I did my exchange in France because I was forced to learn the language. I just had to. It's like learning how to think in a new way. There's something so exciting about that to me. Without that, I would have never immersed myself in France. I would have never created the life that I have now. Speaking the language is often the difference between having a superficial tourist experience and delving deeper into the culture. I like to think of it as overcoming the moat around a castle so that you can actually storm the castle itself. Who doesn't want to see what's inside that castle, you know what I mean? Now, Lingota is the sponsor of this video, and they offer a really
smooth, man, smooth.
The castle, if you will. They offer live online classes with the registration for your sprint. Thank you, Lingota, for sponsoring this video. Speed of life. One of the things that really struck me the last time I went back to the US is the speed of things and the fact that there are less guardrails, less people and things that are going to slow you down or get in your way. And because of that, many people go very fast. In the US, for example, it's perfectly socially acceptable to wolf down a sandwich in 3 minutes and get right back to work. I'm not saying that's what always happens. I'm just saying that it's okay. People are not going to judge you. It's like an acceptable thing to do. And people will walk down the street eating, or they'll eat in their car. And in Europe, you're never going to see those sorts of things. Or if you do, it's like a extremely rare, I don't know, I can't remember ever seeing it personally. These things are not okay. They're looked down upon in exactly the same way that smoking is looked down upon.
It's funny, I saw a guy walking down the street the other day in a sandwich, and I thought, what's he doing?
Weird.
No, you go outside any Greggs, and you see plenty of people walking around with a sausage roll in their hand.
They're just the
coffee
kids. To be fair, with a bottle with tea in it.
You will see a lot of that in London, though. I think Manchester is just a lot more slowed down. Well, the north is much more slowed down than the south. So I think you'll get that possibly anywhere.
Yeah, I think with London as well, what you've got in London is you've got a lot of migration in London. People from all over the world.
It is a melting pot.
It's a melting pot. And I think they bring their traditions with them. So maybe eating on the go is like a tradition they're used to, sort of thing. But it's just like I say, I just saw this guy walking down with a big sandwich in his hand, just biting it as he was walking. I was like, hey, sit down. Sit down and eat a sandwich. Where you go?
No one's in that much of a rush. Relax.
Upon in the US, which goes to show you human beings are willing to draw different lines in the sand. Europeans will tell you it's not healthy, right, to eat that fast, it's rushed. But it goes beyond that. It feels almost morally wrong. I think that's a good spot to pause and introduce a new concept. I have this running theory that there are two forces at play in shaping culture. The first is peer pressure. There's always a certain kind of pressure that exists, enforced by the people around you on how things should be, how you should operate. And the other idea is normalization. It's seeing a certain kind of behavior that's very widespread around you to the point where you get desensitized to it and you find it normal. So let's talk about some examples of this. I want to talk about work here for a second, which feels very related to the speed of things in my mind. The US is a super competitive society. There's a lot of peer pressure to work harder and longer, and if you don't, somebody will be there to replace you. No guardrails, no off switch, so it leads to a more imbalanced way of living, I find. This leads to a dynamic where there's very little vacation time, and not just that, people don't take that vacation time. You're lucky to get even a couple of weeks, but it's been normalized to not even necessarily take that time. That becomes a sort of like self-perpetuating cycle. It does feel like there's a fear of stopping. So there's the peer pressure and the normalization of work that's taking place in the US. And the same is at work in Europe, but just in a very different way. In Europe, I feel a sort of peer pressure to not work at certain times, like on Sunday, because it's seen as insane and unhealthy. And because Europeans treasure their vacation time and really stick to it, it has a normalizing effect. I don't look at time off in the same way I used to. I'm coming to realize it's good to unplug, to recharge, to not have everything revolve around work. So there's pros and cons to both sides here, because I think the US is a really incredible place for the ambitious if you want to advance your career. And that feeling of ambition all around you can be infectious. I felt it as like a fresh wave of energy. The only thing is, it doesn't feel conducive to a healthy rhythm over the long term. And the thing about grocery shopping, I was seeing a lot of people order on Instacart or Uber Eats or whatever, and it's not like those things don't exist in Europe, but there's like an emphasis on efficiency in the US. Here in Europe, a lot of people will shop for groceries on a very regular basis, almost daily or every other day, for fresh produce, and they'll buy in season. There's nothing really efficient about that, but it is healthier and tastier. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about acceptable behavior, because it's related to this point I made about peer pressure and normalization. There are clearly different ideas about work, but also just what is acceptable behavior in general. I find that there's a lot more of an anything goes kind of attitude in the US than in Europe. Growing up, each year there would be a pajama day, which was this really fun day where you'd go to school in your pajamas. I did this when I was like 11, 12 years old.
Parents over here have been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Hey?
Big time.
On the school run in the morning with pajamas on.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well.
And I'm not sure what happened. Maybe this has always been the case and I didn't realize it, but it really struck me that I will see adults, full-grown adults, walking around in pajamas in the US. I saw it when I was there just a few weeks ago. I have never seen that in Europe. And in fact, it's funny, the opposite's taking place here in Paris, where women in my life in particular will come and visit, and they feel they cannot go out without dressing well, because Paris is such a capital of fashion and looking good, I guess. I do draw a link, I don't know how related they are, but in my mind they're connected, between this casualness and the American dream. You're allowed to dream about things that feel ridiculous or impossible. Or maybe that contributes to the startup culture that exists in the US, the entrepreneurial spirit, and of course, I should say there's nuance there. There are differences between the coasts of the United States and the middle of the country. There are differences across the different countries in Europe on this particular issue and all issues. But still, I feel a different vibe when I'm here in Europe. And I have found that this has had a positive effect in my life. This is one thing I'm really grateful for from my time in the US. It's this mindset of like going for it, taking risks, and figuring out a lot of the rest later on. Look, I'm aware that there's a lot of psychoanalyzing going on here. And maybe the way that I see the world says a lot more about me than the world. I'm open to that possibility. But what I love about making these cultural comparisons is the fact that it's always a reminder that there's more than one way to live life. I think a lot of life is shaped by our values and the things that we choose to stand by. And a lot of it is based off of what resonates, what feels right. If you have the privilege to travel or to move to another place, it can be a world-expanding experience. But even if you can't do that, being aware of the biases inherent in living in a particular place, because there are always biases, can lead to a richer, more well-rounded experience of life, I think. Life is full of trade-offs, but I do believe in the power of picking and choosing what works for you. You deciding what your trade-offs are to the extent that you can. I really try my hardest to embody the best of all the places that I've ever lived in. It's just fun, I guess, to see how different groups of humans operate. And I think we can better appreciate the world with contrast. Anyway, I hope this gave you some food for thought. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I like people's takes. I love people's takes on different countries around the world and stuff like that, especially when they've experienced it like that.
Yeah.
I always think of places like New York and Paris and even London to the same extent of somewhere you wouldn't live. You go there to work.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a workplace and you live outside of them areas.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definition of a concrete jungle, sort of.
Yeah.
Where businesses.
It's just too. I think it's just too. I don't think you can switch off in them places.
Yeah.
It's just
Hectic,
too high
isn't it?
speed.
Really, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
So,
and unless you want that, then sort of like that big sort of like city environment, constant on your doorstep. I've
Yeah.
seen now with Manchester. Manchester's just grown. It's exploded.
Oh, it is
It's
huge.
on fire at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's so busy. I was there over the weekend.
Yeah.
Man, it's so busy.
Yeah.
When you go down, I was like, I met my mate in the bar on Saturday lunchtime. It was fucking packed. And I went, I thought no one had any money.
And that's just because the sun's out.
Sun's out, yeah, no.
Oh, yeah, that's it. We've got absolutely crazy over here.
I love it, mate, because everyone sits outside. I'm sitting inside. I'm not sitting in the sun. Sort of thing.
There's plenty of space.
No one in there. Loads of space inside the bars.
Yeah. It's mad how you see that everyone's mood just magically change.
Oh, it does.
It's ridiculous.
Hugely, yeah.
Because we get like no weather over here.
I'm convinced though, right? This is my conspiracy theory, if you want. I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Go on then.
But this is what's getting me at the moment. I was watching, people were commenting about pepper in the sky, right, with chemicals, so sort of like forced rain and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was watching people's people's take on it, and a lot of people were uploading videos showing like chemtrails in the sky and whatever it was. And then it'd be nice and bright in the morning, fucking come like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's like pissing down every day.
Yeah.
And it rained for ages, if you remember.
Yeah.
It pissed for ages, it was freezing, it was cold, it was damp. And then all of a sudden, all the prices have gone up. Right, they've introduced all these rises for everything.
Yeah,
council tax has gone up. All the taxes have gone up. They're being taxed more. Everything's gone up, and the interest has gone up. Interest rates have gone up. Everything's gone up.
Yeah,
the sky's clear.
We'll see for how long.
Smile
oh, yeah. Conspiracy theories here.
Making you happy, taking from the other hand, stabbing you one side and
making you forget about the bad things that have come in. Get a bit of sunshine out, puts everyone in a good mood straight away. All your endorphins and stuff. Puts you in a great mood.
So that's my take on it.
There's a tinfoil hat behind you. I don't know why you've got that.
But it's great. I mean, all the different cultures around the world. That's why I love New York so much. Because you go there, it is different. It's not the same as here.
No,
you go to Paris, you go to sort of like Berlin or wherever. It's because they're different, and they do different things, different buildings, different architectures. That's just what makes the world so good.
But
really
I love meeting people around the world as well. So it's I've got friends that live all over the world from the job I was in, sort of thing. And it's just when you talk to them about different things, and you see people, and you see how they, even when people come to the UK, you see how they sort of like react to how things are in the UK. And it's like their take on it always fascinates me, because it's never, I've never heard anyone give it a bad take in the UK, for example.
It's just different.
But it's just a very different take on things. Things are smaller, things are slower, things are, it's you can get, number one, if you remember, not so long ago, shops used to close.
Absolutely,
or on a Wednesday afternoon, if you remember.
So did the pubs.
The pubs, I know. But it's they close it. Places closing nowadays. The pubs stay open until whatever time you want.
That's right. It's changed.
Stay open.
Yeah. But there's no right or wrong with cultures. People coming over here think it is slower and a bit quieter and stuff, and that is what it is. We've grown up like that, so we're used to it. People come and say, it's going to be different, but it just is, isn't it? But that's what cultures is about. About being different and great.
I like his take on it as well. He was quite fair. Again, everyone's going to have a bias.
Yeah.
So that when you do things, or you say, or you do something, you're always going to be biased to your favourite, whatever you.
He's lived on both sides of the Atlantic, hasn't he? So he's got a good take on everything.
You always tend to sort of bias that. I know I'm very American, sort of like centric bias when it comes to sort of like living, with where I want to live and how I want to live. But you bring them sort of like, I've took a lot of the experience that I had there and brought it back to the UK, and sort of like bits and bobs where you've moved, and you sort of like you try and put it into your everyday life.
There's no particular right or wrong, is there? There's just differences. There's nothing wrong with being different. As long as the cultures are fine and doesn't harm anyone, it's great. It makes the world go around, doesn't it? Absolutely fine.
Indeed, So if you're in the UK, give us a shout.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.
Cheers.